All right, forewarning. I am not very good at sounding professional. So, before the details are shared, know this is a snapshot of my personal art journey and pretty much my discoveries along the way. To understand where I'm going, I feel like it's important to understand where I started. And one of my earliest memories comes from a kindergarten moment. Um, I'm very bad with memory, and I've literally have told my husband a joke. He repeated the joke to assess it, and I laughed and asked him where the joke came from literally within seconds. So like I am the goldfish of human thought. And so I won't ever really tell you events clearly, but I'll tell you how they made me feel because that's what sticks with me. So I don't really remember the memory too well. All I remember was it was a book about kittens, and I feel like it was a rendition of like the kitten mitten story. Um, but what I do remember is my teacher loving it and her actually requesting to keep it. And I don't know, I was a kindergartner. Maybe she's just being kind, but it still stuck with me and made me feel like in that moment something I created someone wanted. Whether or not she was just being nice doesn't matter. Um, but so in that thought, art has always found its place in my heart, always. And sometimes I would literally dabble in art, and other times it would find other avenues. Um, Writing slash poetry is one of my biggest things. I use art in the form of drawing as a therapy as well as poetry and my own personal writings. Well, no, I don't have as much content to sell, like show of that as I do with my art now. Um, and one thing about me is I know what I love and I know what I hate. And when I was growing up, anime, fantasy, stories, storytelling in general was always a passion of mine. Um, I'll spare you my little teeny bopper age, but to sum it up, middle school, art came and went. High school, I appreciated art, but I didn't really get back into it. I more like hung out with people that enjoyed doing art, and that was my gateway. And college, I tried to take a art history course. No, I didn't even last like 2 days. I quit that. That was not the kind of art study I wanted. But I continued making art friends, and their passion kind of fired my love again. Um, I never really feel like art ever left me though, because I did keep it in the back of my mind, and a lot of times it would still play with the poetry. And honestly, a lot of times I would do cooking, and one of my artistic endeavors would be plating the food a certain way. And these are kind of ways that I kind of kept my artist self in there, but didn't really touch the tools. Um, so like as time progressed, my college days gone, job after job piled up, and there's only bits and pieces where I would art dabble. I literally had all the tools I needed. I kept thinking if I buy this tablet, if I buy this pen, I'll start doing art, but that never changed. I like the the passion was there, the drive was not. Um but that changed when I came across what job I currently have. Um I think it also kind of changed when tech started to accelerate. When we started having like mini computers in our phones, I started to kind of establish myself when it came to what kind of art do I like. And I ended up starting my own Discord archive of pretty much all kinds of art that speak to me, or something about them that I just can't stop looking at them. I personally do not obsess or really go down the rabbit hole of why do I like this art. I just gravitate towards it. And then as a result, when I start using these pieces as references, I've noticed now that I work to capture what it is that takes me in. And a lot of times it's usually two things. It's either a pose or the way they're looking. Like those seem to be the fundamental, only when it comes to like people. It comes to like plants and stuff, that's a whole different ballpark. Um but anyway, I'm sidetracking, sorry. So, my new job, after the management switched, I found myself up front pretty much on my own. And we have customers, we do, but there's definitely moments of restlessness, and that turned into doodling because that's my go-to. When I get bored, I doodle. I don't know how many eyes, like single eyes, I've drawn in my lifetime when it comes to that, but that is my habit when I get bored. And that habit started turning into more complex works. And there was something that finally just clicked for me, and I made a simple promise: 90 days of art. And we'll note, all I really stated was I was going to art daily and see where it went. And then life happens as it does, and I found myself 8 days behind arting in a day. And I literally spent that, because I did the numbers. I had all the art saved up, and I counted how many pieces I had done. And so I was determined that day that I was going to catch up and do 8 arts. And I ended up doing more. I did 12. I was impressed personally because the most I had ever done was like 2 arts in a day. So as I hit kind of like the mid-mark, 45 days, I stopped counting because at that point I became an art junkie. Creativity to me is like jam to my toast. Without it, life just feels flavorless. And now I've taken a bite. I can't go back. This has been set. I've fully committed to deciding my life is art. Now, I will say this much. I'm fortunate enough to know that even if I don't make money with my art, I can still pursue it. So money is a very small factor when it comes to my art. And as my fixation grew, so did my tool bag. When I first started, it was just a pen wherever I could find one. Now I have a purse that literally has 2 full cases of brush pens. One of them designated colors, the other one designated to like black brush pens. And one leather case that has my go-to art needs, which, if you're curious, I'll lay it out. There's an eraser, pen, like eraser pencils, which are like the best thing I've ever come across when it comes to that. I have at least 1 pencil in there. I'm not gonna lie, I have probably like 4 like just regular pens, and 1 red pen, and 2 brush pens. And those are more or less my go-to bag. I think honestly one of the funniest things though was when I first started doing the sketches, it was all loose paper. I would just we'd have paper that we'd have to throw away after a couple days, and I'd just take it and use it for sketching. And my biggest thing was like once I started buying sketchbooks, I just was like, this is it. This is the moment right here. And I own like 7+ sketchbooks. I probably own over 15, but 7 active sketchbooks right now. And 5 of them have designated themes, and then the other 2 are kind of just like grab and do whatever you want. Um, if you're listening to me and thinking, I want to art and get better, start with a different mindset. Art to art. Now, note, there is bad art. If you look closely enough, you'll find lessons are hidden inside it, though. Keep the ugly works. Go back to them. You might just start noticing that perfect hands, just that right look, or that perfect smile. Bad art has its place. Use them as a reminder, or even as inspiration for a redo. And to move on, quoting Bob Ross, happy mistakes. I don't know the rest of his quote. Maybe I'm even saying his quote. Became intentional magic. Some of my favorite works are pen only. And then on the topic of pens, brush pens are life. At some point I began mapping lines before they were drawn, and now I often see the work clearly in my head before it even hits the paper. Brush pens for me feel like they're leading the process. This is really hard to put into words, but if you've ever tried them or had that experience, please share. I'm curious. But if you've never tried them, do it. See. It's an experience. I don't think I will never not own a brush pen at this point. And I honestly don't have many people to talk about art in general. There's a part of me that's kind of putting this out here in hopes to share and also hear about other people's experiences and journeys. And I'll put in the descriptor one of my favorite brush pens I use. Honestly, I told my husband I want like 20 of these. I will say the downfall is, for me personally, they run out of the ink pretty quick. After the 45 days passed and I was determined I was obsessed with arting, we'll note before that, all I did was sketch like at work. It didn't really come home with me. I didn't like sit on the couch and sketch. And that 45 days, that was the turning point, because all of a sudden it wasn't just work I was sketching. It was any time I had a chance to have a moment, I would sketch. And that was when tools started to accumulate. And now, instead of, I would always be that person that would run around, do that 3 check. Wallet, keys, phone. Those were my checks. And now you add the purse that has all my art supplies in it. I'm always reaching for a sketchbook if I'm going out. It's crazy to me. Art got its hooks in me. And I decided, instead of fighting, I'd swim straight towards it. Connecting these dots created a unique roadmap. My own artistic creative guide. The point here is to share the discoveries I made while on this journey. After reflecting on how I became that art bug, doodling whatever inspired me in that moment, I learned a few key points that led me to a fun way of growth. Experimenting with pen and ink while accepting mistakes and utilizing those. Variety in art led me to discover my true passions. World building through game concepts, horror as a whole, telling psychological stories, and ultimately learning that I naturally gravitate towards like those elements in my work naturally. I already said naturally. All right, whatever. We're keeping it in. Okay, lastly, and I feel this was the true core of my style development, creating my own personal art archive. Okay. Art archive was what really resonated with me. Most of my 90 days of art had a direct correlation to those references, and I had built up these over the years. Note, the point of sharing all this is to share the process that led me to where I am now. Maybe you can take something from what I've said. Maybe this just is some ramblings of some crazy girl. I don't know. I'm not you. I'm not assessing how you take this. But just put it this way. If you love to art and create, don't fight it. Embrace it. See where it goes. Maybe just start with a week of art, 10 minutes, and see where it takes you. Just try and push yourself if you really, and don't think monetary gain. I feel like that's a different idea when it comes to working with art. There's no problem with that. I just don't think that's really working towards loving your art. Also, don't sell yourself short either. Always keep yourself high in your own thoughts. Maybe not too high. I don't know. It's a slippery slope. Do you, man. As for me, many more projects are on the rise. And my DeviantArt and Instagram are continuing to grow. We'll note DeviantArt has the most of my art. Instagram's kind of my place to provide music with my art and do little fancy videos with them. The next time I probably make one of these, we'll be sharing more about my VTubing ideas, what's going on there. Learning to paint in my own shop, which will be a while. And I'm not gonna lie, I really can't wait to see that milestone. So until the next time, I will catch y'all later, little chompies. That's your new names. Accepted or not, I do not care. I'm gonna call you it. So this is Chibi Chomp nomming out. Have a good one. I'm sorry about the dog barking at the end there. Seems appropriate. All right, boy.